Hi everyone, it's Kathy. Thank you so much for joining me. Today I'll be sharing a card using some new products. I'll be using the Chills, Shivers, and Goosebumps die set, the Happy Halloweeds stamp set, and the Slimline card builder die set. So I decided to create a background using the die cut words. So I cut the die cut words 5 times from 80-pound white cardstock, and I adhered them to another piece of white cardstock that measures 8.5 by 3.5. To adhere the die cut words, I just used a glue pen, and I'm not going to make you watch me glue all of those words down. I just left the first 3 in because something happened that turned into a happy accident. You'll notice when I lift up this word Shivers, the S is stuck to my craft mat, which means that I got a little bit of glue on the front of that word. And then the same thing happens with the word Goosebumps. I thought about using my Xyron machine to adhere the die cut words to the front of the card, but I wanted to be able to have that little bit of wiggle room so I could move them around in case I didn't get them quite where I wanted to. But using a Xyron machine is definitely another option. So I continued to adhere the die cut words all over the front of the card, and because I got glue on the front, it was sticking to my hand a little bit, so I used my anti-static powder bag and pounced it on the front of the card. Then I just used a dry brush to brush off the excess powder, and that helped get rid of the sticky. Next, I started to do a little bit of ink blending with some Distress Oxide inks, and I've got this part sped up pretty quick because I did the ink blending and then I walked away, and when I came back I didn't like it, so I'm going to show you how I fixed it in just a moment. But one of the things that I do want to mention is when doing ink blending over die cut words that are so delicate, I would recommend that you use an ink blending brush, because it tends to get in between the nooks and crannies and around the letters really well. And also because the bristles are soft, you have less of a chance of accidentally lifting some of the die cut words if by chance you didn't get them glued down all the way. As I mentioned, I really wasn't too happy with the ink blending at first. So to fix that, I came back in and did more ink blending, and I just extended the Twisted Citron into more of a half moon shape. And then I just kept blending it out with the Lucky Clover, the Faded Jeans, and the Black Soot. So the happy accident that occurred, the glue that ended up on the front of the die cut words actually ended up resisting the ink. So I ended up with some splotchiness here and there. So some of the words are totally coated in ink, but other words have some white spots, which I think just added a really cool effect, and it also helps draw your eye to those words to make the background just a tad bit more noticeable. After I was happy with all of the ink blending, I did run that panel through my die cut machine with the Slimline card builder die. For the little Halloweeds, I stamped them a bunch of times and then colored them up with my Copic markers. I'll have all of the Copic markers that I used listed over on my blog for you, and I'll be sure to link to that post in the description box below. The coloring that I did was really very simple. I started with my darkest color and went around the whole outer edge. Then I went to my mid-tone and blended out the darkest, and then I came in with my lightest so that I would have a highlight right in the front of the face of the little skull and the jack-o'-lantern. For the leaves, I did the same thing. I started with my darkest and outlined the outer edge of each of the leaves, and then just filled in the center with a lighter green marker. After I had all of the coloring done, I did run the images through my Brother Scan and Cut. Before I started to adhere my little weeds to the front of my card, I did splatter some white spray over the background just to add some stars to my spooky night sky. I used liquid glue to adhere all of the little weeds to the front of my card. And you'll notice underneath the jack-o'-lantern that you can still see the white because the machine didn't cut out that part between the jack-o'-lantern and the leaves on the stem. But there's an easy fix for that. All I did was I used a Copic marker that was pretty close to the color of the background and just colored in those white areas. So once all of that was done, I added a whole bunch of liquid glue to the back side of that panel, and I adhered it to the front of a black note card. My note card started out at 8.5 by 7 inches. I scored at 3.5 inches on the 7-inch side, so my finished card is 8.5 by 3.5. Once I had that adhered in place, I had another piece of white cardstock that I had cut to 8.25 by 3.25, and I adhered that to the inside of the card. I stamped the sentiment, Happy Halloweeds. And then because I had so many of my little elements left over, I added 2 of those on the inside of the card just to bring the front of the card to the inside of the card. And I still had a whole bunch of those little weeds left over, so I was able to make a second card. I'll share that second card at the end of this video. So that wraps it up for today. Thank you so much for joining me. For more information about the products, make sure you head on over to the Whimsy Stamps website. And again, I'll have all of the Copic markers that I used listed over on my blog, and that'll be listed in the description box below for you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, we'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.